Okay, inshallah, let's open it up to the floor. If whoever wants to ask any questions, uh, any comments as well, if you want to add something that we might have missed, go on, Sean.
Our classical ulama have written books on how to treat a wife when she is pregnant, on menstruation, and so on. Also on practicing mercy and compassion. Why aren't we studying these?
Bismillah. Just to add to your comment, it's true, living with a woman who's different in her behavior towards you is difficult. And like you said, the second part it talks about in that verse is mercy. You just have to learn to let these things go. Little things. There's going to be bad habits your wife has, small things which are going to irritate you. You just have to let it go. Just think about the bigger picture, about sustaining a marriage. And it's the same for the women as well. Your husband made you stuff which irritate you, but let it go. It's just small things. These small things, if you keep picking at it, will lead to bigger conflicts over time, may lead to resentment. So having that mercy is important. Like I said, mercy, compromise, whatever you want to call it, letting these small things go. In terms of your question about today, the masajids in our day and age, not every single, but most of them, they just become a place of just a masalla, a place to come pray, and then a jama'at, and that's it. Whereas back in the time of the Prophet, we know it was news for more than that. It was news as an institution. They had delegations coming from, for even to plan war. The masjid was a central place of the community for organizing the affairs of the community. But in our modern day time, we've lost that. And as a result, people are now seeking out other means. And in terms of, let's say, so that's one reason why. And there could be many reasons. In terms of the family, why is it we're no longer seeking out for our family? When I mentioned the verse earlier from Surah Nisa, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that applies to the fathers as well. They should be looking for their daughter's husband. Their daughters should be putting themselves out there looking for a husband. Partially, that's a failure on the husband, because he has a duty as well to find a suitable husband for his daughter. And if he doesn't do his job, she may marry someone that's abusive, that neglects her rights, and that's going to be upon his neck. So we used to have fathers, it's constantly wali. There's a reason why they are wali. They need to be out there looking, bringing the possible suitors to their daughter. And ultimately, only a man can vet another man. Women are naive to the charms and sweet words of men. And it's like a woman understands another woman best. So when I was looking for marriage, one thing I did was I got my wife to meet my sister to see how she is. Like, what do you think of her as a woman? Because my sister, she's a woman. She understands other women best. What do you think of? What's your opinion of her as a woman? It's the same for a man. So our families have failed, especially the fathers in some cases, to be that medium of seeking marriage. And in some cases where it could be where the father and daughter doesn't have a bond. The father and the daughter doesn't have a bond. And as a result, she doesn't seek marriage through him. She doesn't feel comfortable. She's too shy or too embarrassed to ask her. So as a result, she goes out looking for herself. So as a result, like you said, people now go looking out for themselves. And they get the time, and we see some of the consequences of doing so. They get the time wasted, or they marry the wrong person. Hope that answers your question.
Aren't children and wives described as fitna in the Quran, which means schism, disorder, and ordeal?
No, it means they are a trial. So it means another trial. So now in another ayah, Allah says, "Ya ayyuhallazina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara." O you believe, save yourself and your family from the fire. Meaning you have a responsibility to teach your kids Islam, the obligations, teaching them what to stay away from the haram. You as a father are the central to that teaching, where we see today in some cultures, the fathers, they just go to work and they have nothing to do with the upbringing of the kids. They just come home and let's say the kids are crying. They'll shout for the wife, "Go! Why is he crying for? Sort him out." And they're just sitting there watching TV. They have no involvement in the education of their children or raising the kids. They're just sole providers. Where in the Quran, Allah made them the primary person for raising their kids and educating their kids. So when you're talking about the fitna, as in they're going to be tried. Raising kids are not easy. You can non-Muslims understand as well. Raising a child or a family is not easy. They're gonna test you. They're gonna push your buttons. Kids can be difficult to deal with, handle. Sometimes they purposely would try to trigger you because they know how to press your buttons. So that's what the verse is talking about. They're going to be a fitna. Yeah.
What is your view on interracial and intercultural marriages?
Intercultural marriages, well, I say it depends on the situation of the brother. If or the sister, she's marrying abroad, which is very rare. How they've been raised. If they've been raised as a very cultural person, and they have, let's say, their parents are very cultural, and they want someone, let's say, from the same background, it's best probably not to stick with your marriage, within your culture, sorry. It's situation dependent. Whereas if you're someone that's grown up with very little culture, then intermingling with someone else's culture is not going to really have an issue. And I say even more specific for the new generation, the second, third generation in the country, they've grown up in a diverse environment, and as time goes, every subsequent generation, the culture gets less and less. So I'd say for our kids, future kids, it shouldn't be a problem for them. By then, they probably have lost their culture, so it wouldn't be an issue. But as you said, in some cases, the culture can lead to conflict. Different cultures, behaviors, norms, the way you behave have left. You mentioned specifically, like brothers, Asian brothers have gone to marry Moroccan sisters. Arab culture, especially North African culture, is different to Asian culture. How we behave around our family, around in-laws is different. Some of our customs are different, and they find that ajib, they find that strange. So in those scenarios, it wouldn't work out. But to answer your question, it's situation dependent. In some cases, it depends on the person, how they are. But in our modern day age, I don't see it as a big issue for our new generation. Because we see it, brothers marrying from different cultures. So.
Well, go on, Brother Noor.
Islam.
Before you ask the question, you have to state how long you've been married.
Are we not fooling ourselves, trying to live an Islamic way of life under the rule of secular liberalism and the rise of extreme feminism?
There's a challenge in terms of this whole issue of making hijrah to Muslim lands. Without doubt, raising kids in this society is a big challenge. And I've seen many Muslim parents who go to extreme lengths to ensure that their kids are not exposed to these kind of secular, liberal ideas, toxic ideas of LGBT, ideas about atheism, about secularism. They do their best to avoid these types of education in school. Now, one, it comes down to practicality. Can you afford moving abroad? For some brothers, it's not in their means to move abroad. And in terms of the second issue, I'd say I've heard brothers moving to Qatar, to Malaysia, to Dubai, Turkey, where they've gone back there, and the argument is it's not fully Islamic, but it's not as bad as what we're living in today. We can still have our basic Islamic identity and without it being compromised living in society. But it is a challenge to think about for people that are looking for marriage, for the future, for their kids, and their environment. For the ones that are going to stay here, again, It's about, like you mentioned, damage limitation. How do you go about ensuring that you limit the amount of exposure you have to these kinds of ideas? Because over time, these kind of ideas will infiltrate and change the perspective to their worldview, which we know opposes Islam. So it may affect your marriage. Your wife may adopting a certain idea. Actually, why am I doing this for? He should be doing this. How do you now protect yourself? Again, there's many ways which you could avoid that sort of exposure, but ultimately there's only so much you can do.
It's important that we learn to understand that there is an agenda to break the family structure and the primary role of our sisters in Islam as mothers and wives to stay in their homes. What are your thoughts on this?
There is a clear agenda from the government to target kids, Muslim kids, because the older generation, our age, we're very set in our ideas. It's too late to change our ideas. Because our kids are naive, they're malleable, you can change their ideas. So if they're at the minimum just dilute some of the ideas of Islam, for them that's success. And just to tie into the brother's question, as time goes on, I use an example of the black community. Over time, they've lost their culture, they've lost their identity, and now they've adopted Western culture, if they're America, UK, etc., whatever the culture is. So they've lost their roots, cut off. And the Muslims have potentially the same future. Subsequent generations are going to possibly move away from Islam.
We are in a situation where the rights of the husband are eroding to a point he's been described as controlling and misogynistic, and further amplified by celebrity scholars siding with secular liberal ideas. How do we overcome this?
At the end of my advice, I've talked about when you meet sisters about vetting them, and one indication is her family, her father. What kind of person is her father, her mother? Because they take them as role models. What kind of relationship do they have? If she's had a healthy upbringing in an Islamic upbringing, Islamic environment in her family, her father's practicing, that tends to be an indication that these kind of ideas won't be a problem for you. Feminism, what kind of nonsense ideas? Like I said, there's a clear attack traditional orthodox Islamic positions in our modern day society. Academics have infiltrated amongst our ulama and imams, etc. Yeah, so yeah, no, I've seen that. I've seen that in there was some imams talking about it. They were sharing a marriage contract, and there was in that marriage contract talk about if you get a second wife, then basically I have a right to divorce you. So, but anyway, yeah. So these kind of ideas, like I said, you can relate to the topic. It's important that you vet the sister and ask her what kind of ideas does she have, alongside checking what kind of family she was raised up in. Because her family has a big, especially if she has a close relationship, she sees her mom as a role model or her father, and they're Islamic, that'll have a big impact on her as a person, as a wife, as a Muslim, as a sister.
Why are our sisters getting married late and many not considering marriage? What is it? Are they affected by feminism, career, fear of marriage?
So one is sisters have prioritized their career, and the reason why they prioritize their career, they're scared of marriage. They've seen the high divorce rates, and they've seen at the end of a divorce, they lose out, and we have this culture that divorced sisters are somehow no one wants or undesirable. That's the reality. Divorced sisters find it more difficult. Even a brother that's been divorced, which you get them that they don't want to marry a divorced sister. So because of this culture they see around high divorce rates, they thought, you know what, it's best if I get a career, that if I eventually do get married and it doesn't work out, at least I have a career. Whereas if I got married young, I I gave up my job, pursuing a job, a career. I get divorced. I have nothing. I come out of that marriage. I don't have a career. I don't have a husband. So that could be one reason why. Another reason could be the environment that they're in. So one complaint we see from sisters that just like the brothers say, it's difficult to get married, the sisters say the same thing. In some cases, it could be their criteria. They're looking for like the perfect match. The list is so long, it's impossible to find someone like that. Or it could be that, again, linked to the fear of getting married or being in abusive marriage or being divorced, that they delay marriage for that reason, the fear.
So let's end it here because we're running out of time now as well. They're going to kick us out. All right. Jazakallah for coming. We have our YouTube channel. We upload these talks. We have a WhatsApp group. Please share it with others if you find it beneficial. We'll ask the brother to end it with a dua, inshallah.